not give the test back next time. I think everybody will have taken it, but then if they haven't, well, that's their problem. All right, the final exam is next Thursday, not this coming Thursday, it's the next week, whatever date that is. I guess the 5th or something like that. I don't know. I don't have my calendar here. 10:30 in this room, 2 hours. You get a card. You can go ahead and get it today if you want. And on that as we go. I have more to say about Thursday. All right, here's where we left off the other day, and that's on the interpretive areas of the brain. And when it comes to these are for, as we know, complex thought processing. And most of this occurs kind of in the area where the parietal, temporal, and occipital lobes all come together. All right? And then when it comes to the brain, remember we have what we could call a dominant hemisphere, left or right. In most people, one dominates. In fact, that's probably 90% or better of the population. It's probably the left tends to dominate. But in some people, it's the other side, and in other people, they're co-dominant. There really isn't any dominant as such. All right, and what kinds of activities go along with these? Well, the non-dominant tends to specialize in the non-verbal things, whereas the dominant side typically does take care of the logical, verbal sorts of things. All right. And, of course, there's the issue of being right-brained and left-brained, and you've probably seen this stuff before. Excuse me, have a drink. That's why I get trying to rush with my practice. All right. Left-brain activities tend to be more logical, sequential, rational, analytical, objective. Looking at parts, that's part of being analytic. And then right brain, more random, intuitive, holistic, synthesizing, subjective, looks at wholes. In other words, the more creative activities. Now, who typically does better in school, of course? Left, yes. Now, it doesn't mean right, can't. They do, but they just do it a little differently. All right? Schools tend to favor left brain nodes, and, so that kind of thing. Now, a summary of what happens in these various areas. Remember, we talked frontal lobes. Those are the higher intellectual processes that occur there. Remember, of course, who has the larger frontal lobe, us or the little lammy pies? We do, right? Theirs isn't very big. All right, so when it comes to planning and complex problem solving and judging, all that kind of stuff, yes. Also, motor, well, sheep do this too, of course. Voluntary motor impulses originate on the frontal lobe. What gyres of the frontal lobe? Presimple gyres, right. That'd be a lovely thing to put on a lab practical, wouldn't it? All right, parietal lobes. The sensory cortex is there, where it comes to things like temperature, touch, pressure, pain involving the skin. Those are interpreted and localized there. And then association areas for understanding speech and choosing words as well. That's on the parietal lobe. Temporal lobes, hearing is in essence interpreted there. And in association areas to interpret experiences and to remember things like music and visual experiences. And then the occipital lobes, well, the visual cortex is back there for interpreting vision, and then association areas that help you remember visual experiences. That would go back there as well. All right, now some other tidbits. Memory. Now, we can divide memory up into 3 basic kinds. We can have what we would call short-term, recent, long-term. All right? Now, what's short term? Well, just as the name implies, a few minutes, maybe a few hours, no more than that. Now, short-term memory tends to get moved into recent memory if it persists at all. And that is centered about an area called the hippocampus, which literally means the seahorse, because it's actually that shape. And I forgot to bring the model of that in, and I'll show it to you on Thursday. But in any event, that can last anywhere, again, from a few minutes to a few days. Now, it appears that if there's something you're trying to memorize, you've got to get it from the anterior frontal lobe into the hippocampus, and then finally into the areas where long-term memory can reside. Long-term memory, well, that can go for years. What is it? Well, it's stored not in any one location, but in several locations over the cerebral cortex. And memories are typically not stored all in one place. They may be stored, like with your computer, how you want to back up your files several different places. Well, the brain automatically does that. And it's a good thing, because if one of those areas becomes damaged, well, the memory isn't totally lost. It's probably still there somewhere else, stored in an alternate location. What is memory? Well, it's basically dendritic connections, dendrites, from one cell forming networks with other neurons. And that's kind of what it is. And the more of those connections you form, the better. Okay? So, that's basically what it is. Long-term memory can last years. Short-term memory, and maybe a few minutes or an hour or two, and that's it. Think of someone who has Alzheimer's. What are they losing? The short term. They can probably tell you something happened 60 years ago, but they can't tell you what they had for breakfast a couple hours ago. All right? So there you go. All right, now, white matter. Well, we know it underlies the gray matter in the cerebrum. And we have different types of fibers. And it's just very logical. You would expect to see this, because we can project things in really about 3 dimensions. Number one, association fibers. What do they do? Well, they connect one gyrus with another on the same side of the brain. All right. So, in other words, you may have a gyrus on the left connected with another one on the left, or one on the right connected with another one on the right. They operate on the same side. And they connect between one or more gyri on the same side of the brain. The commissural fibers go across the chasm, so to speak. And probably the best known example, the corpus callosum. We've seen that in lab. The corpus callosum are white fibers that connect the right and left hemispheres. All right? So, essentially there are fibers in there that will connect a particular gyrus on the left with the corresponding gyrus on the right. All right? And in addition to the corpus callosum, there are also some of the so-called anterior commissure and the posterior commissure. Do exactly the same thing. Connecting a gyrus on one side with the corresponding gyrus on the other. Well, like communication between the primary motor cortex. What gyrus is that located on? Precentral gyrus, right? Both left and right. All right, there can be communication between them through the corpus callosum. Right? Okay. If I want to stand on one foot, that may require a little bit of communication between them so they don't operate at cross purposes to one another and have me fall over. Well, there you go. And then, one more, and that's the projection fibers. And those are the ascending, descending tracts that basically are transmitting impulses and information from the spinal cord to the brain and the brain to the spinal cord. All right, and of course we talked about those in lab. Ascending tracts carry what kind of information? Sensory. Descending tracts are motor information. Right. Okay, so very simple.
Sorry, can you give an example for the association fiber for the gyrate?
Well, it could be involving complex interpretation between, say, something like speech and choosing words.
Okay.
You know, like you've heard something, you got to interpret it. Now you have to generate a response. Well, that could be occurring through something like that. All right, the diencephalon. Now this is, of course, under, if you will, the cerebrum, and it's also superior to the brainstem. And this is, in essence, made up really of two parts that we know and love, the thalamus and the hypothalamus. Now, where do you find the thalamus? Where is it located? Well, as we note, two oval masses. They essentially are located on either side of that third ventricle, and in fact, they form the lateral walls of the third ventricle. All right? Where is the third ventricle in relation to the lateral ventricles? In the middle and below, right? Inferior to them and in the center. All right, so these two thalamic halves are arranged kind of in a V shape, and they form the lateral walls of that third ventricle. Now, what about the hypothalamus? Well, what does the prefix hypo mean? Below or underneath? Well, guess where it is? Below the thalamus. That's right. All right, simple. So the hypothalamus, as we'll see, basically helps to form the lower part of the lateral walls of the third ventricle and the floor of it. All right? And the hypothalamus is only about the size of a grape, but as we'll note, it really does quite a lot. What does the thalamus do for us? Well, the thalamus is concerned primarily with what? Sensations, right? Sensory information comes into the thalamus, but the thalamus can only give you a generalized sense of temperature, pain, pressure, touch, so on. If you want to localize and interpret where that is occurring, what do you have to have happen? It has to be relayed from the thalamus out to the sensory cortex. The sensory cortex is what allows you to actually make the localization interpretation of the sensation. Okay? Remember, in an ascending tract, in a spinothalamic tract, where did the tract start? Down the spinal cord. Where does it end? Thalamus. And remember, then there was a third neuron that went from the thalamus out to the sensory cortex. Sensory neuron coming into the cord, all right, crossing over there, and ascending, and then to the thalamus, and then there it would synapse with a third order neuron that carries the info out to the sensory cortex for interpretation and localization. All right, so that's it. So if that sensory cortex isn't working, and I'm touching something, well, all I would know is I'm touching something. I don't know where, and I don't really know what it is. Okay? I can't tell whether I'm just touching the chair, or I'm petting a disgusting hissing cobra, or what's going on. All right, there you go. The hypothalamus, as we said, floor and part of the lateral walls of the third ventricle. Now, what is it related to? Small area, smaller than the thalamus, but it produces a lot of things that are related to homeostasis. So here's a term we had since the beginning. What does it mean, homeostasis? Right, maintaining a stable internal environment. All right, now look at these things. Heart rate and blood pressure. All right, pretty important to maintaining a stable internal environment, I think. Temperature regulation. What happens if that gets out of whack? You could die, exactly. All right, what happens if you get too hot normally? What does the hypothalamus cause to happen? Perspiration, right. It's a way to cool you down. If you get chilled, what kinds of activities would result from the hypothalamus stimulating various and sundry muscles and glands in the body? Goosebumps, shivering, shutting off perspiration, right, inhibiting it, constricting capillaries in the dermis, right, all that stuff. All right, water and electrolyte balance. Here is where the thirst center is located. Thirst center. All right, right now, I'm thirsty. So what is the hypothalamus telling me to do? Get a drink. Yes. All right. Not much left in the pot here. All right, so there you go. Same deal can happen with electrolytes. Did you ever crave salt? Well, see, that would be the hypothalamus again. Hunger and body weight. Well, if you're famished, what do you want to do? Eat. What do I do? Pack of crackers, right? Sustenance. All right, movements and secretions of the GI tract. All right, now that I've eaten my pack of crackers, what's happening in the stomach? Increased secretion of juice. All right, increased motility. Peristaltic waves in the small intestine are now increasing their frequency, right? All that stuff. All right, stimulation of the pituitary gland. Now, remember the pituitary hangs from that little stalk called the infundibulum right down into the sella turcica, the bony encasement in the sphenoid bone, right? All right, pituitary gland considered to be the master gland of the body. Now, you're going to get into a lot more of this when you get to Bio 108 and you look at endocrinology. But the pituitary gland is considered to be the master gland of the body because it puts out hormones that control a lot of other hormones and their release. All right, but here's one that we know comes from the pituitary. Growth hormone, right? Remember that one? All right, the pituitary largely releases growth hormone in response to a releasing factor or hormone that comes out of the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus largely controls the pituitary. All right? And then another thing, regulation of sleep and wakefulness, the circadian rhythm. What was the other gland that we had? We saw it in lab that controls that kind of activity.
It's not the pineal gland, is it?
Pineal or pineal gland, yes. That's a lovely question on the practical, don't you think? It might. It might. All right. Another thing about the hypothalamus is this bit with rage and aggression. But now this is more rage and aggression that is related, let's say, to survival. And we're going to see more of that when we come to the limbic system. Now, once upon a time, this limbic system was referred to as the kind of R complex, R standing for reptilian. Now, let's just think for a moment. Let's suppose that a nasty cobra comes slithering into the room. What does it want? Eat. Yes. It wants to survive. So it's looking for food. Well, what kind of things does it use for food? Yeah, rodents. All right. So, forked tongue and all that good stuff, right? On the hunt. Now, it runs into you. Now, it doesn't want to eat you because you're too big. But it's afraid of you. So what's it likely to do? Bite you. Right. All right. Disgusting things. All right, so there you go. And what else does it want to do? Well, it's got to reproduce. So, I don't think there's they're not immune to their own venom. So that's kind of a dicey sort of proposition, but anyhow, there you go. Well, you know, this is essentially looking at survival. You know, things that one has to do to survive. Those are centered largely in that limbic system. So things like fear and anger and pleasure and pain, well, you know, that's controlled essentially out of the limbic system. Well, you know, that's about all disgusting reptiles do, right? They're not shells. I think they're very affectionate. All right, now what is the limbic system made of? Well, there are a couple of things here we want to mention, and the others we're not going to be too keen on. The limbic lobe, I wouldn't worry about that. It's actually in the very base there of the cerebral hemispheres. The hippocampus, that's fairly important. We've mentioned it earlier. As we said, it's kind of the shape and size of a seahorse. And it, in essence, is also useful, remember, for recent memory. It's centered about the hippocampus. All right, the amygdaloid nucleus, I wouldn't worry about it. The mammillary bodies, we did see those in the sheet. We have two of them, but I think little Bob only has one, right? In any event, it's around the hypothalamus area. In fact, it was kind of like posterior to the infundibulum when we're looking at the sheep brain, looking at the dorsal view. And then the anterior nucleus of the thalamus, which is really kind of the floor of the ventricle. But in any event, that's the limbic system, and it kind of encircles the brain stem, is really where it's located. Deep within the hemispheres, it just kind of encircles the area that is more or less superior to the brain stem. And it is there primarily to control aspects that are necessary for survival. That's it. You know, one of the views of how the brain developed was it started off with these lower level things like the brain stem, and then like the limbic system got layered on top of that, and then the cerebrum got layered on top of that, you know, kind of like it's all still there, from the simplest brains to the most complex. All right, the pons, or the pons varioles, we'll just call it the pons. Anterior to the cerebellum, superior to the medulla. It's that swollen like area that you'll recall, kind of on the underside of the brain, right over the medulla oblongata. It's about an inch, and it consists largely of white fibers with a few neurons scattered throughout. The nuclei would be obviously referring to the cell bodies and some neurons. Now, it's a switchboard, is really what it is. A switchboard. It connects the spinal cord with the brain, and it connects parts of the brain with each other. That's really what it does. All right? Now, there are two kinds of fibers here. There are transverse fibers, and there are longitudinal fibers. The transverse fibers, which are on the ventral part, those take care of impulses from the cerebrum to the cerebellum. So the cerebrum and cerebellum communicate through the pons, fibers in the pons. Then there are longitudinal fibers. These tend to be more dorsal. And they belong to motor and sensory tracts that bring impulses up to the cerebrum from where? The spinal cord. All right, so they're more for the vertical transmission, you know, whereas transverse fibers more horizontal, cerebrum to cerebellum, and longitudinal, the spinal cord to the cerebrum, and vice versa. Now for the medulla. Now, it's only about an inch long, but remember now, the medulla starts up there in the cranial cavity. Where does it continue on toward? Well, it continues on, remember, as the spinal cord, doesn't it? What's the border between medulla oblongata and spinal cord? What's that large opening in the base of the skull called? Foramen magnum. I thought I heard someone whispering. All right? That's it. So if you're superior to the foramen magnum, you're looking at medulla oblongata. All right? About an inch above that, that's medulla oblongata. If you're going below it, inferior to it, well, you're looking at what's called spinal cord, right? The spinal cord is basically a continuation of the medulla oblongata, right? All right. Now, where's the white matter on the medulla and the spinal cord? Is it on the exterior side or is it in interior?
Spinal cord, is that
Yeah.
exterior?
Interior. Remember the gray horns? Where are they? They're in the center, right? Okay. White matter, those are the columns that basically go up and down. They are the myelinated